My name is Michael, and welcome back to Inside Security. This is episode number 6. And we're going back to quite a technical episode, as this will be about incident response and forensics. What it's like to fight against ransomware groups and nation states every single day, basically. We'll probably touch on what it's on different attacks, on different ransomware and ransomware groups, what it's like to come into a completely compromised IT environment and be tasked to clean it up as an incident responder. So with me today is the one and only Rasmus. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for that little introduction.
The double intro.
The double intro, yeah. Hi everyone. Rasmus Grönlund. I have a mixed role, I guess. I do many different things, but yeah, we're here to talk about a bit more a part of that, the major part of that, which is the incident response. So the primary thing that I do today is that I do forensic analysis and incident response of essentially real attacks. So not the scenario when someone's mouse breaks and you need to do IT support, but more so an entire organization's IT infrastructure is down. It's shut off. It's not working. It's fully encrypted, or someone's mailbox has been compromised, and then it's me and the other people in the team I work in. It's our job to figure out how did they get in, what did they do, what did they steal, what did they extract, what did they look at, and how do we make sure to kick them out in a way that doesn't allow them to immediately get back in again. I work at TrueSec, and that's where I have this role. And I started out a little bit in a different field, though. I started out as a security tester and penetration tester, so different type of offensive engagements, as in trying to hack into web applications, APIs, and infrastructure-based tests of various kinds. And then I've slowly kind of moved over to this more blue side of things approach, or blue side, I guess you would call it, even though I believe that knowing both sides of the spectrum is a tremendous value, because if you're going to figure out what someone has done to you, how someone has hacked you, how someone has destroyed your environment potentially, knowing the mindset of the threat actor, and threat actor being what other people might call the hackers. The more proper term would be the threat actor, the antagonist, or the bad guys, if you will. If you are to figure out exactly what they do, you need to get into their mindset. You need to understand them. And if you have never seen that side of the story, or that side of the field, I argue it's a bit more difficult. So that's a experience I consider extremely valuable going into this.
Do you think it's the most common way to become an incident responder is to go from offensive to defensive?
I don't think so, based on the other people I've seen and other people I've spoken to. I know several of the people that I work with have the same they have gone the same steps, but when we've been working with or talking with or collaborating with other security firms and other people, the most of them that I've spoken to at least have more of a pure forensic background, in the sense that they have used forensic has been their thing. They might have come from an IT support background or some type of technical background and then moved into forensics, or maybe straight from university. But I don't meet a lot of people that have both perspectives on things. I wouldn't say, except for the people that I work with, to be honest.
I think it's awesome to have both sides.
Yeah.
I think it really benefits you. So I mean, just to sort of set the stage and like to get an idea of how fast and how vast things can be, like what time frame would you say is like the fastest you've seen from an initial contact of some form to domain admins, or even like a ransomware deployment? Is it days or hours, or like what is it?
If we talk about the fastest, it's drastic. We're talking in some cases, less than an hour. We're talking it's common to be less than 2 hours at least. There's all variations of things, and there's more automated and more manual, and different threat actors and different groups have different approaches to things. If they're also going to steal data, it usually takes a little bit longer because they first need to find the data to steal, exfiltrate that. Commonly, they want to find the backups and destroy them, and then, for example, encrypt the environment. So it can differ a bit, but the moral of the story is that it is so fast that if you're not prepared for it, you seldom have a chance to even react before it's too late, unfortunately. And yeah, that can be in some cases as fast as less than an hour, especially when you look at the more automated, the more simple versions of, for example, ransomware, or in some cases there has been the scenario that the first entry point for an attacker actually immediately gains them the highest privilege possible in the domain or in the environment, and then it's like this, and they have full control over the entire IT infrastructure. It's a horrible scenario to be in, but it's not all too uncommon, really.
It's game over just from there, basically.
Yeah, you start off with the game over screen, and you wake up or you get a phone call late Friday night or Saturday morning maybe, and someone just gives you the notice that we're in a bad spot.
Yeah. So I know that you're up against like ransomware groups, even some script kidders perhaps, and nation states. Like, would you say that all attacks are after the same information? Like, does every attack have the same end goal, or does it differ?
It differs quite a bit. There's a good mix out there right now. Ransomware is very high on the agenda. People have been talking about it for quite a while now. So when we or when I talk to people and I ask them what's your biggest risk, what's your biggest fear, people usually mention two things. It's either ransomware or it's personal data, and that's natural that these come up, and it's natural that those would be things you would be scared of, because that's what everyone is talking about. We have the GDPR on one side, and we have ransomware, which everyone screams about how devastating that is, and quite frankly, it is. But to make a bit of a comparison, the play field has kind of evolved in the sense that from being few groups to now being a mass amount of groups that does these type of activities, where anything from a single individual that just manages to sign up to a ransomware as a service have all the tools necessary to completely encrypt a corporate environment in a matter of a day, an hour, or weeks, potentially, if they prefer, which kind of puts the perspective on things that it's not always even possible to fully understand what is the real goal. When it's ransomware, yeah, usually it's quite clear. But what is it that tells you that before they deployed the ransomware, they didn't also exfiltrate some very sensitive data that they are then going to sell to someone else? What do you define then as the real motive behind the attack? It can be twofold. It can be multiple things. And now we're also even starting to see nation states that actually allow and do ransomware. So now it's kind of getting mixed in between. And if we look at things like North Korea, they're known for taking money or going for money. That's what the criminal underground and the criminal guys also go for, versus other nation states usually are more interested in various type of information gathering. But then now at the same time, we have cases from China when there's groups from there that are known to be associated with ransomware as well. So the connection here in between is getting a bit blurry. Yeah. What's criminal underground and what's nation state, and what is the difference? There is a difference, but they overlap quite a bit.
And I also suppose that ransomware groups can have like close ties to nation states as well.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, there's that as well. But speaking of like this end goal, we've also been hearing and talking about double ransom lately. So what's a double ransom?
So usually when we talk about double ransom, ransomware is not a new terminology or a new word per se, but it's essentially demanding something. You're demanding money usually, or demanding something, and you're holding them hostage. You could even claim it to be blackmailing in some cases. The double ransomware part is usually associated with or related to that there has been both data exfiltration or data leakage, that someone has stolen information about you and encrypted the environment. And then they can either ask you to pay them for one of those things or both of those things, or pay first for the decryption keys, and after they paid that, then say, oh, by the way, we also stole 1 terabyte of your most sensitive files. We'll publish that if you don't pay us. So the playfield here has evolved a bit, and there's actually some ransomware groups now that are pointing and saying that the next big thing, and that's something I believe in as well, is that, why encrypt an entire environment when all you need to do is steal the most sensitive data they have, and then tell them, hey, we will publish this for everyone to see unless you pay.
So, like, how can you be sure that if you pay the ransom towards, like, because they sit on this information, they have the data, and if you pay them an X amount of money, they claim they won't release it. So how can you trust them? Is there an honor among thieves, or is it like, does that differ from various groups or not?
It's a difficult question to get a clear answer to, because if it's an honor among thieves, I wouldn't necessarily say so, because generally, or quite often, the view set or the mindset of many of these groups, and they publicly write about it on their websites or on their notes, that they consider themselves an organization, a business. That some of them even write, we find security flaws and we help you be aware of them for a pay. And it's like, yeah, you do that by encrypting the environment. That's not really a legitimate business case.
Yeah.
But if data has been stolen, you essentially have to assume that no matter what's being said, that is eventually going to end up in the wrong hands, or it has already at the point, right, ended up in the wrong hands. I would very seldom expect for that data to be completely erased, simply because there's a direct monetary value to almost anything. There are some groups that have claimed that now they are done, they have all the money they need, and they shut down the shop and they delete all the data, and that might very well be the truth. That might very well have happened. But if you ask yourself, if you have been conducting this type of illegitimate business, if you will, and you're sitting on something that is worth a lot of money, is it normal for you then to burn that? Probably not. Maybe if you believe that is what's going to tie you to a crime and put you in jail, yeah, maybe. But generally, you have to expect for it to be out there somewhere in the hands of someone who shouldn't have gotten it in the first place.
Yeah, makes sense. And also, just to sort of set the stage for what a ransomware actually can cost. I know that the computer manufacturer, or like brand Acer, was ransomwared, officially released something like a week ago, and they were ransomware for $50 million, right?
Yeah, and I read just earlier today someone mentioning that the average, I didn't actually fact check that, or I don't know how accurate that really is, but someone mentioning that the average is getting closer to $30 million now, which I don't know if that's really true for the average. Maybe it is. It's hard to really tell, because many people give different reports, but what is definitely certain and definitely true is that the amount has drastically increased. That is for certain. That is true, and unfortunately there are still many that pay even this massive amount of money.
So I mean, of course, most of them are after money because they want to ransomware and get money from that ransom. So, like, do you have any insight in how an attacker chooses a target? Like, do they just spray everywhere and just pick the first best target, or do they actually like do some other evaluation to like who to target?
Yeah, it depending on the group, they tend to use a little bit the it tends to be a small difference in the techniques, even if many of them there's a lot of similarities. There might be small differences, or there are usually small differences. Some of the groups they focus on phishing as their primary technique, and that is usually done in a way that you first do the big spray and pray, if you might call it that. You send it out to a lot of the places, to a lot of people, and all you need is for 1 or 2 or 3 of them to hook, and you have something. That's quite easy to do. You need real email addresses to send to. You need to do some pre-work to have that data available. You need to set up the infrastructure to handle all those mails coming out, as well as then if there's a remote access Trojan, a rat that's being installed, you need to have the infrastructure naturally to receive the communication then that's going back to you after a successful phish. And that is one of the most common techniques historically, right? That has been used a lot. What's happening now is that a lot of them are moving more and more towards internet exposed services, internet exposed systems of various kinds, and various types of very successive or very efficient exploits. It doesn't have to be the latest and greatest, like happened with the exchange. Everyone immediately jumped on that to exploit these 0 days. They might as well use old exploits, because people are bad at patching. And if you have 50,000 out there in the world that has, say, RDP open for internet, or uses a particular version of a software, why phish? Why compile a list of email addresses that are legitimate, phish those users, and then maybe end up on a laptop where you are a low prev user, you don't have access to many interesting things, while you instead can target 50,000, a list already kind of pre-made for you, and just try to get in there instead, and usually end up on a server or some type of system where they are where you usually have higher privileges, or at the very least there are other users logged onto it with higher privileges.
Yeah. We got from chat, we got and a shout out to Pale Skin in Sweden, who actually produced this epic intro music that I have. He says that the average ransom is up 171% to $300,000 according to Graham Cluley. So that's his estimate. Yeah, it's getting expensive to get ransomed. To say the least.
Yeah, it's I think that is the same one I'm referencing. I didn't look at the facts, so I don't know where they got those numbers from. Like I mentioned, there's no proper real central database that will tell you what is the real average number here. Because all the threat actors, they use different payment methodologies, and so many of these organizations, and frankly the vast majority of the one that I'm involved in, they never make public. They're never public knowledge. So, are those taken into consideration when calculating the average? No, not really.
I doubt it.
So, yeah, exactly, because that would be very hard to track unless you have managed to find, say, a Bitcoin wallet that is used by this particular group. Then, yeah, you can look at individual payments made. But
I was just gonna ask that. Like, does a certain group use the same Bitcoin wallet for multiple attacks, or is it unique for like every attack or campaign or something? If you know.
I will say that I only have partial knowledge into that, for the simple reason that me personally as well, that I don't think you essentially should ever pay, because you are either sponsoring criminals who, what else might they do with that money? You're sponsoring nation states that through criminal means are exploiting you. And I do fully understand, sometimes you're in a situation you have no other option. It's your life's work potentially. It's the job of thousands of employees. You might find yourself in that situation, but I personally never really get involved in the actual paying, because at that point in time is usually where I get out of the dialogue and say that if you take that route, I won't judge you. I don't like it, but I also don't really want to sponsor it, or I don't want to be involved in it, because it's a shady business altogether, and it's sponsoring something that's
Yeah, please don't. Just don't sponsor bad stuff if you can.
Yeah.
If you can avoid it.
Exactly.
All right. So we've chatted a bit about the concepts between ransomware and stuff. So let's get a bit more technical. Like, what's the most common way in? Is it via phish, or is it via some other attack, or and like what stages do they do? Like, do they follow a normal pen test? Like, do they do recon and enumeration and stuff, or like how does an attack look? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah. So if you look at these statistics globally, most reports out there and most organizations out there, including the one made by us and in TrueSec, will point towards phishing still being the primary vector, still being the main reason for obtaining access to an environment. If you do, however, sum up various types of external services like RDP, vulnerable web applications, and the vulnerable other services, that sum or that total is perhaps not as big as phishing, but not far from it. So it's been phishing, and it's moving more and more towards exposed systems of various kinds or exposed services of various kinds. Exactly what will take over as being the most efficient one, it's hard to tell. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going forward towards the exposed systems, because you gain more for less work. It makes sense from a bad guy's perspective to why struggle with a client and an email service and an email setup when you can just immediately get straight to the good stuff by ending up on a server. So these are the more common vectors, at least for getting in. And once you get in, there's usually a mix between automated activities and then manual activities. So the first thing that happens usually is that there are some type of automatic activity that will do some type of assessment of the environment. It can do basic things like checking is the user that they end up in the context of the user that the threat actor ends up in when they exploit, or when they end up on a system. Is that a local admin? Does it have is it an Active Directory environment or a standalone system? What's the IP address? How many systems is it talking to? A few of these basic checks, essentially, to get a feeling for what type of environment is this. Because you gotta think as well, when you send out an attack towards thousands of systems potentially, you want to have some way of understanding which ones are the interesting to go after, which ones are the not so interesting to go after, at least initially. Because they're real high value targets for them, the ones that might pay out a lot. Of course, they want to prioritize those, because that's more likely to give them value for time spent. So usually that happens, and then there is, when there's been a decision, they will now attack this target, which sometimes happens immediately, sometimes it can be hours, sometimes it's even been days. That's usually, now they go in and do more manual activities. At this point in time, it is dependent a little bit on that pre-info, depending a little bit on where they are, what privileges they have, but the primary activities that we usually see are different types of scanning activities. So looking around in the network, looking around on file shares, trying to access what they can access, looking for things like files that has the word password in it, or the contents. Say you have a file share that's available to every user that in a domain. They might look through that entire file share for any word that starts with password, for example. So different types of scanning, understanding where they are, what's there, what systems are available, which ports are open, which services. Is there 500 machines here or 2 machines? That type of activities, which is quite frankly not the easiest to detect. It's usually, you can do this very, very silently, even if you might not think so, because you can masquerade your behavior as otherwise very normal behavior.
So are they using like custom written tools, or is this off the shelf, you can download it just from anywhere kind of tools usually?
It's a good mix. It's not that every single case they have a different tool. That's not really the case, or that's not really the truth, but there is a big variance, to be honest, and it's anything from basic PowerShell one-liner or other types of simple command line versions to do different type of scanning or searches. In some cases they install tools. In some cases they install tools like Nmap, for example, and they use that. In other cases they use a standalone binary. I don't want to mention any company names here, but company names. But there's a good deal of options out there, and in many cases they're cracked licensed versions that can be used as well. So there is a great mix of things, anything from a compiled binary to a PowerShell script to other types of command line tools, through as well as custom written stuff as well.
Oh, we got I just hit affiliate with Twitch, and so you can now subscribe to the channel. I've got the first subscriber. So yay, first sub. Thank you, Gomin. That's epic. That's going on the Hall of Fame.
So the highlights.
The highlights. So Rasmus, I had to barge in and highlight this.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully so. All right. So, but that's awesome. So, like, once they sort of know where they are, and like they want to know what they can reach as well. How long is this stage usually? Are we talking like minutes or hours or days, or does it differ as well?
It differs a little bit on the size of the environment and how quickly you can get an understanding of the environment, but usually it's very fast. We're in many cases we're talking minutes, in some cases we're talking days, and in some cases we're actually talking they are re-scanning. So they scan once, and they do some other steps, and then they move to some other system somehow potentially, and then they scan again. And that's usually the more long-term, the more persistent actors that want to really cover everything. But generally, it's very fast. It's very, very simple in a sense that it's often masqueraded as relatively legitimate activities, hard to detect, and things such as antivirus and so forth will be generally not ever detect these type of tools or these type of activities, if that's what you are relying on as your detection technique or prevention technique.
So, I mean, are everyone sophisticated, or are there some script kiddies in it as well?
There's I will say it like this: even actors that has been essentially confirmed to be nation states are sometimes at a level where you're a bit surprised. You know, it feels a bit like, why? On one hand, it's really advanced. On the other hand, that's a rookie mistake. Multiple typos and things like that. You know, not carefully actually checking your keyboard and not really caring about being stealthy. So for sure, there are big variations. And one example comes to mind really, which was actually a ransomware case where it's hard to tell really if it's someone smart and clever or if it's a script kiddie, because on one end the activities, the methodology was very basic, very script kiddie like, in the sense that it was loud, it was not stealthy at all, it was quick and dirty, but on the other hand this person had built a custom ransomware that had never been seen before, and you couldn't find any information about it whatsoever online. It was completely so as I was looking at this, it was a little bit baffling, right? It's like, on one end, this seems like such a simple actor that doesn't really know what they're doing, but on the other hand, they built their own ransomware. So as we then started digging into the ransomware and figure out that, this was actually, if you're familiar with the Auto-IT scripting language, I wouldn't call it PowerShell because that's an unfair comparison really to both sides, but it's something you can use for legitimate purposes, to build scripts and compile into a binary and to do various types of things. I don't know it that well myself, but what this person had done had actually been to, from a bunch of online sources, stolen or put together rather a couple of functions essentially that would do the hard work for this person, for this threat actor. Or this group, I should say. I can't fully prove it's one individual, but for this threat actor, and the threat actor had then added just approximately 40 lines of their own. So 40 lines of custom written code utilizing these functions that were publicly available online. That was everything that was needed to fully encrypt an entire office environment, which is quite scary.
Yeah. Sounds too
Now,
easy.
it sounds too easy, right? I mean, there's some level of cleverness in this because it still had some level of smartness in it. At the same time, though, the decryption method was very clunky and it was written in a way that small files would actually be completely destroyed. You couldn't actually decrypt them, which didn't make sense. And actually, the decryption key was temporarily stored in memory as the encryption took place. And it was actually not only stored in memory, it was actually also put on disk. So there was a small text file created which contained the decryption key, which for anyone who does forensics out there, then you will know that it's very hard to completely erase all traces of that decryption key. But what do you do if you have the decryption key, but this any small file in the environment is so encrypted that it's destroyed and it can't be decrypted anyway? Then you're not in a good spot. You feel like you have the win, and then you
Yeah.
realize, but no, not really.
So you still can't get everything back even though you have it.
Indeed.
So, like, speaking of different ransomwares, I know that like ransomware as a service has been like growing lately. So that's basically what it sounds like as a service. You don't need to know anything about like coding or ransomware, right? You can just buy it and then you can use it, and they take a share of the ransom, or does it cost like an initial fee? I'm not sure, but yeah. So you don't need to have any technical skill. You can deploy ransomware anyway, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
You do need to have the technical skill to actually perform the attack, but you
Sure.
don't need to have coding skills. You don't need to build your own ransomware, and you don't need to deal with that part of things. And yes, you can become an affiliate of a ransomware group, and as long as you fulfill their requirements, which varies between groups, but one of the common denominators or common things for these groups is that you need to be fluent in Russian. That is a factual statement. It's not an opinion-based statement. It's just the fact that that's what made a lot of these groups demand of you. Some of them also demand proof that you have active access to, a compromised environment, but it varies a little bit. And we also know that there is a big community, there is a big network, there's communication, and there is if I would ask a colleague who specializes in threat intelligence, we had a chat not long ago, and we spoke about this, and you could almost compare some of the people to consultants, that they go between ransom groups and help each other. Now, it's hard to fully prove, but that's kind of what everything points towards and how it looks here behind the scenes. But yeah, you can, as an outsider, as someone who hasn't ever written a single line of code, suddenly get access to a fully functional and effective ransomware, and your job then is to compromise an environment and find a way to utilize this ransomware, and then you share a sum of the ransom together with the group that developed the ransomware, assuming now the organization you have compromised will decide to pay. So yeah, it's
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
it's pretty scary, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So what's the next stage of an attack after we've done? So we've done the enumeration part, basically, right?
Yeah, we've done some scanning, we've done some enumeration, and sometimes that's not always the first step. It depends a little bit, but usually what you're after at this particular point in time is that you want to escalate privileges. You want to get more permissions, you want to get more access in the environment, and you want to take over the entire domain, or what's in another world, or in a non-Windows world would be whatever the identity management system you use is. So if you are in a Linux environment, something that you are using to manage all your access, all your identities in your Linux environment. It doesn't have to be Windows, even if Windows is the by far the most targeted and the most common platform to compromise. And there's many different techniques to do that, to escalate privileges. And when you look at, for example, CVEs and security bulletins and so forth, a lot of them are talking about now there's a new CVE out there that's a privilege escalation CVE, and it's really scary. And then you look next week, and then now there's a new one, and then next week, and there's a new one, and you quickly realize that they are all over the place. There's so many different techniques out there, and so many different vulnerabilities. But the matter of the fact is that when you look at the methodologies the threat actors use, it's sometimes the case that they use some of these CVEs, but quite often they don't need to. Quite often they can rely on much more simpler technology or simpler techniques that has been with us for a very, very long time. And if I say one word and I say Mimikatz, then I think many will understand that what that is, at least. Essentially stealing credentials either from memory, which was generally what Mimikatz is focusing on, or stealing locally stored credentials. So if you have local accounts, that those credentials will be stored locally in the hives of the machine. That also goes for service accounts, because the password for a service account need to be stored local on the machine for the service to automatically start when the system boots up. So you have a few variations in techniques here on how you steal credentials. And one of the relatively common questions that appears is that what do you do if you do Mimikatz? You will usually get the logged on accounts. What if there's no one logged on? Well, how hard is it to force someone to log on to your system? What happens if you suddenly prevent the system from fully functioning? You trigger a situation where an IT admin has to come and do something because now system X doesn't work anymore. Someone with privileges need to go there and check. And in the vast majority of cases, that will be done with a high privileged account and where the threat actor sits and waits and are ready to go, steal the credentials.
Yeah, and in comes the domain admin and helps out.
Right. It's not all too uncommon that this system doesn't work. Let's go there with our highest privileges possible to investigate what's happening. Unfortunately, that's not very uncommon at all. Yeah. And there's actually another good story, which is also from a real case that we can make a comparison here, because there's another technique that if you don't manage to steal any credentials in this way, that doesn't mean that's the end of things. There's other techniques, other methods to use. And I touched a little bit on it earlier, but that is to look for essentially human mistakes in how passwords are stored. One technique could be to look in the Active Directory if we're talking a traditional Windows domain. What many people don't know is that any computer or any user that is part of the domain by default can read a lot of information in the Active Directory, which includes all users. They can read all computer objects. And what they can also read is the description field, which even today is not uncommon that someone puts a password in the description field, because when that account is created, they are sitting at the domain controller. They're fully under control of everything that's going on. No one can create this user because it's in an admin group and it's an admin OU and it's a service account, so it needs to be shared somehow. So they just put the password in the description field. And then they forgot that every single computer in the entire domain and every single user in the entire domain can read those details whenever they want.
Yeah, that makes it a bit easier for an attacker.
for certain, and it also
it's readily available just to read. That's a thank you for them.
Yeah, exactly. And usually when you're at that point in time and when you're enumerating things and you're looking for credentials, you want to look into the Active Directory anyway. You want to understand what's there, which are the domain controllers, which are the domain admins, like what's I shouldn't say, but what's the threat actors' high value targets? Well, it's the highly privileged accounts. And then they need to know the name of those accounts to know what to look for. Makes a lot of sense. But if they stumble across a description that tells them the password, well, if there's an easy win, why not take the easy win?
Yeah.
We all know the not the saying, I shouldn't say it, but a lazy programmer is a good programmer. It kind of applies here as well. The simple method that gives you the keys to the kingdom. Why do the hard thing if it's right there readily available for you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's also like why burn an expensive 0-day if you can just use a readily like a 4-year-old exploit for something that's not patched. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
Why go for the high stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. And the to actually share that story, which is a bit ironic, or ironic, I shouldn't say maybe, but funny, I think, is that there's also another very common use technique is to search for any available file or folder or share on the network that has anything related to passwords, anything mentioned that's about password. Maybe the file itself is called passwords.txt. It's unfortunately sometimes there, but and we did a investigation about that not too long ago. Let's not talk about exactly when, but that was then at that point in time a technique the threat actor used. They were looking for passwords and they were really searching, and you as was doing the forensic investigation, you could follow their traces. You could see how they were struggling. They were in a bad position. They had very low privileges and they really wanted to escalate. They were not admin on the machine, so they were really trying to find anything they could. And eventually they decided, their methodology, it doesn't work. We need to change strategy. We need to do something else. You could almost feel how they realized that and changed the way they worked, because it happened for a couple of days, and then it's like a shift in how they work, and they started to look for at this time then for network shares, and they managed to find this company file server that was syncing profiles for users, not everything, but it was syncing certain things from users, and that's where they stumbled across the jackpot. What we could see, what we could find then, was that they found a large amount of files that were called various things like my passwords, admin passwords, password or shared passwords, and it was all kinds of things. And as we discovered this, it was also then we had to, of course, inform the affected parties that not only are the domain and your systems heavily under attack, they're also stealing passwords that are in some cases to people's private banking accounts, to people's Spotify accounts, to shared company partnerships and dealers, because that's something that many people shared in the organization. And the interesting part, or the funny part of that story, is that as we were then compiling a list of these are the files, these are the shares we have found that contains passwords, or that we think contain passwords, because it's not always super clear, and we say that this is a very poor practice. This is obviously a problem in the environment, and this needs to change. Not only the password doesn't only need to change, but this behavior needs to change going forward. And in that particular meeting, the CISO, the head of security, says that, damn, we need to do this. I'm going to start right away. I'm going to change the passwords of my password text file that I have on my desktop. The room goes silent. The room goes completely silent for a couple of seconds.
I'm like, he's not joking.
He's not joking. Complete serious. And no one says a word. And it's like, how do you react? And then the dialogue goes on. No one mentions that ever again, and the dialogue goes on. And we reiterate that you should that's a bad practice. You should stop storing passwords in text files, in Excel files, and in Word files. Please don't.
Please don't store passwords on your own computer.
Indeed.
Mikael Takeo, my second subscriber. Thank you, man. It's 2. It's awesome.
It's a record episode. There's a lot of highlights here.
It's a lot of highlights. This is going to go down in history as the epic episode. So I mean, that's. I love hearing about simple mistakes. But I got a pre-show. I got a question from Gomin, who's the moderator tonight. He asked, Ricky, you can sub now. So, woohoo! Hey, Ricky, thanks for the sub number 3. This is awesome. Thanks, man. It's good to have you here, even though you were a bit late. That's okay. We forgive you.
You are forgiven.
You are so forgiven, Ricky. Sorry. So I got a question pre-show from Gomin, who's the moderator. He asked, and it's a simple question, but it might be hard to answer. So what's the simplest thing that has caused the most damage that you've seen?
Ooh, the
It's tricky.
simplest thing. Yeah, that's definitely a tricky question. The first thing I'm thinking of, I need to kind of define what is simple
Yeah,
and what's simple for who, because it's a very hard question. Um,
he's good at those. The bastard. He's good at hard questions.
I think um, it might not be super simple in that, in the sense. I think it's a scenario that many people don't think about, at least, and how easy it is can to cause massive damage to someone. Uh, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details about the actual attack itself, but essentially what happened was that there was a one-man organization, a person that ran their own business. They've been doing so for, I think it was somewhere around 20 years, or closing up to be 20 years at least. A long time. It's at that point in time kind of their life's work. It's what they're dedicated a major part of their life doing. This particular person or organization, if you will call it, had one computer, one laptop, and unfortunately managed to get caught in the big wide pray and spray scenario. For some reason, that person's email was out there. It could have come from anywhere, but they were caught in it, at least. They're alone. They would never expect someone to attack them. They didn't have anything to do with security, and if you ask me, they didn't do anything that is of central interest in that sense. It was more towards handiworking scenario, which respectfully in its own way has a lot of sensitive things, but it wasn't super sensitive things in that regard, if you compare to what it could have been, at least. They got encrypted. It was one laptop, completely encrypted. It hit this person hard, very hard. They went to their backup provider, and it turned out that the backups this person had been paying for quite a while hadn't actually really done their job. There was no proper backups. They didn't really exist at all, which now left the person in a situation that, okay, there's no backups. My only system that I have where everything is stored has been encrypted. And when it's only one computer to encrypt, you don't really need to do much to do that encryption, right? You kind of just need to make sure that there's no active antivirus that immediately stops them, and then you need to do it, right? You need to very basic things before it happens. So that person had kind of no other options than to. I see you smiling, and I think I know why.
Yep. Go on.
I'll let you comment on that in a second. I'll finish this story off with a sad ending then, so you can continue on a good side.
Yeah, do
Because this story has a sad ending to it, unfortunately, which was that this person had no other option than essentially to pay. It was their life's work. There was no backups. There was no information anywhere else. Nothing stored in the cloud or anything like that. Nothing on a server. So they reached out, but they never got a reply back. No response. Life's work down the drains for one phishing email, and a provider that didn't do their job.
Yeah.
So leaving it out on a sad end, I'd give the word to you to say something positive.
That's terrible. I mean, yeah, I've heard a lot of like bad endings in stores like this, like companies going bankrupt and stuff. It's the one in Finland comes to mind, like a couple of months ago.
Right.
So, all right. On a positive note, thanks Darudi for 6 months sub in advance. That's epic. Ooh. For real. Also Rasen for subbing as well. So that's crazy. Thanks, guys. So yeah, that's
we're really getting into the highlight reel.
Yeah, exactly. This is for sure the most epic so far. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's I think more companies are gonna go out of business due to ransomware attacks, or for leakware, like from the leak basically. Because the one in Finland was like a psychiatric company, and they did leak some of their data, right? Not all of them, but like some patient data, and it sort of ruined people's life for those specific people that were leaked, I think. And then that company, because no one wants to go to them again, so they went bankrupt and had to, went out of business. So that's crap.
Yeah, that's when it goes to a level where it's not only frustrating, but it's really bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad. And there's very little thing that is done to proactively prevent these things from happening. And in many countries, these people are, although I guess I should say half confirmed, but depending on who you ask, confirmed, almost supported by their government. There's in some countries very, very strong ties between some of these groups and people in the government of that country. So just knowing that these things, and actually what I know, that there's some ransomware groups out there that publicly state that they will not attack, for example, hospitals, because they have no intention of causing physical harm, for example. Now, really make the distinction: is hospital enough to to satisfy that? There's so many different times, different shades of gray here in this area that I think no matter how you justify it, I don't really see how it's justifiable.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's probably something to make themselves feel a bit better, but it's not. So yeah, it's I don't know. But it's something that I I have a question I've been thinking about, like. What does it, and it's a tricky question, like when you come into an environment that is actively, like you have active threat actors in the environment, and you know that they might spot you, and you don't know if, did you spot each other or not? Like, is that some form of like adrenaline kick, or like what is it like to come in and you know that the threat actors are in there, like at the same time as you are? Are you afraid to make mistakes so they know that you're onto them or not? Or like, yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Definitely, if it's an adrenaline kick, for sure. If it is addictive, definitely. Do you?
David said the same thing.
Yeah. And do you sleep good that night? No, not really, because you can never really let go. And when is night at that point in time? When someone might be just around the corner? Because the difference between a cyber attack in that sense, and we have thousands of systems, and if you would think a criminal scene, say there's been a break-in into a house. There's the scary part, or the field of where the threat actor might be is much more narrow, generally, I should say, compared to an environment where they could be hiding anywhere in thousands of systems, and you might not know at all where. So yes, is it scary? Yes, because you never know what's going to happen, what they will hit, or where they are. Will they try to identify you, try to stop you, try to understand what's going on? And when especially when there's more advanced threat actors, for example, nation state, we have very commonly seen that when they become aware that we are there and doing things to stop them, they change their methodologies, they change their motives, they change their central infrastructure, and they hide, and they change their techniques to make it more difficult. And in some cases, we have even seen that they have read emails that are within the organization's security work to try to protect this. They're outgoing emails as they're trying to contact security firms and trying to get help and talking to authorities and so forth. We can see those things has been read. So someone is lurking, someone is there, looking in your trash cans to figure out, what are you doing there? So yeah, is it scary? Yeah. Is it adrenaline pumping? For sure.
Yeah, that's a kick right there. It's something for the. adrenaline junkies, if you stop one of base jump, you need something else. Do incident response. That's,
Oh yeah.
So like that, does the attacks differ depending on what the threat actor or who the threat actor is? Like if it's a ransomware group or nation state, do they operate in the same way? Is everything like 24/7 just constantly, or like does it differ somehow?
It depends on. I mean, naturally, it depends on many factors, but usually there is a difference. So if you look at ransomware groups and criminals, let's put it like this: non-state sponsored attacks, at least, then we are usually quite often talking about the attack really hitting the organization Friday night or Saturday maybe, or even Sunday in the middle of the night. Usually, in many cases, it's adjusted to the time zone of the organization they target, so that it's not uncommon, for example, that an incident that I get involved in, it starts late at Friday afternoon, because that is when the encryption was sent out everywhere. So that is definitely common for the criminal part of things, that the weekends and the late evenings are a very high active point for them, where a lot of things happen. If we, on the other hand, look at nation states, that's usually quite a big difference. Depending on which nation, there is sometimes super clear, you can almost see not almost, you can clearly see the time schedules that they work between. You can see their workday, usually it's more than 9 to 5, but 9 to 6 or sometimes 9 to 9, depending on the circumstances a bit. And then you see the weekend and all activity stops. And you're thinking to yourself, did they really just go for a weekend break? And that's the only thing that makes sense. And then you start to understand, like, this might be that nation, it might be this one. Okay, let's look up their public holidays. And you look at that, and it's like, at that point in time, we see traces back here, but there's a big gap around these three specific days. It's not Saturday and Sunday, but it's maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or something. And then there's a gap here of 4 days, because 3 days plus then Sunday, and that happens to coincide with the public holiday. And it's like, yeah, does it really make sense? These people, they're working, they went home for the public holidays, and then they come back, and when you look at the forensic data, yeah, it matches. It does. If you look at the criminal underground, the ransomware groups, that is not as commonly the case. Sometimes on the big holidays, definitely, but because think about it from their perspective, if they're earning a lot of money, well, they want to spend it also at some time, right? As much as addicting it probably is to earn a lot of money and whatever comes with that. Anyone who earns money usually want to do something with it at some point in time, and what better time to do it than a holiday?
Yeah, and it just hit me that for like nation states, it might just be a job for them. Like they might just work office hours and then they go home and they think, for us, of course, like it's an atrocious thing to do, but for them it might just be like their day-to-day job, and they go home at 5 or 6 and that's it.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird to think about, because with that motive in mind.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I mean, and let's drop another term that we might explain. So attribution is basically the determining who the threat actor is, right? And is that important for you as an incident responder, or like do you need to know who they are, or does it help in any way?
Need to know, not necessarily. Does it help? Yes. Does the organization that has been attacked want to know? Yes. It's not very uncommon that someone says the phrase, "Who would attack me?" or "Tell me who attacked me," or "Tell me who attacked us." That kind of phrasing is not uncommon. And it makes total sense. That's part of natural human curiosity, right? You want to know who would go after me and my organization. So that makes quite a lot of sense that you would do this. You would want to figure that out from that perspective. Now, does it help in terms of the forensic activities? Definitely. definitely. The more you know about the threat actor, the more you can, from other sources than the pure data you have available to you in an a compromised environment, sometimes semi, half, or very broken environment, potentially encrypted environment. If you can, from an outside source, get a lot of understanding, who is this threat actor, how do they normally operate, what are known bad indicators of compromise associated with this threat actor, or maybe threat actors in general from this particular country, that will tremendously help a forensic investigation. But it's also something that's very hard to do, because you need to stay very up to date, as it's always changing. It's never fully stale, that they always use only the same things. Everything is always evolving, which you can even say for just the ransomware itself. Usually you can see that every other weeks or months there's a notification that, oh, now there's a new version of this malware, and now there's a new version. So it's continuously evolving. So yes, having that knowledge and that understanding of who the threat actor are, and what are known bad things associated with them, will help the investigation. And perhaps most importantly, it would help to understand how they commonly operate. What is their normal procedure? Do they normally steal data? And are they usually good at stealing data? Because if they are, then it's even more important that the organization prepares a statement or prepares public announcement if or when that data becomes public. So it changes the way you conduct investigation, and it changes the way that the organization need to behave to be prepared for what's to come.
Mm. So have you, like, speaking of attribution and who might be behind some attack, have you ever like narrowed down a threat actor to like a single person or something? Or like, is it hard to like, or is it just a group level?
To narrow it down to a single person is then you start to get into the field of your authoritatively accusing someone.
True.
Which is kind of if you want to do that, you need to be very, very certain that it's an individual, a specific individual. Which is why, if I were to claim that I could point at a specific person, I'm not so sure I would say that I can. If I can say that I can point a specific group and there is knowledge of members who are members of that group, absolutely. If I can say that we have in some cases managed to figure out almost which house a particular individual or group operates from, yes, that has absolutely happened. So pointing out the individual, I don't want to be as bold as to say that I can authoritatively say that, but very close to it. But that is otherwise the big pain point. If you would compare, for anyone who's seen a regular TV show or movie, a criminal show, the goal is always who's the perpetrator. The goal is, in an incident response and a forensic investigation, is to effective as quickly as possible get the organization back up on track and in as secure manner as possible. Finding who the bad guy is unfortunately a secondary objective, especially at least when you look at the private sector, right? The public sector or the police authorities and these kind of parties, they are naturally more focused on the finding the right individuals, which is why we also see a lot of FBI most wanted posters kind of continuously updated with new people that has been identified.
And that's something that's sort of been bothering me a bit, and it might be because it's just evolved so quickly the last few years. But like if you steal something from another company, like that will naturally end up as like with the police, and then the police will do the investigation, and they come up with some conclusion, or they might drop the case if they don't have enough evidence. But it's a police case at least. If you steal something cyber, let's throw in some buzzwords. If you steal something like on the internet from someone, like data from a company, then it's suddenly not a police case, because you have to hire an external company to do the investigation and stuff. It really differs from like if it's a physical thing or a like data basically, and then they have to call in like you, for example, and they have to pay a company to do the investigation. which is not the case if it's a physical theft. So yeah,
Yeah.
that might just be because it's really evolved like so crazily fast lately. But I don't know, just something that bugs me a bit. It might.
Yeah, it's a special market, or it's a quite special situation. It makes sense that the authorities can't handle all cases.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I think it's smart to strengthen the cooperation between private and public sectors on this matter, because totally makes sense that the police can't handle everything on their own when this is so widespread, and in some cases the laws are a bit unclear or not as restrictive, and some organizations, if a nation state is not actively trying to stop these guys, at what point in time does this become an attack from one country to another? Where's the line? Where do we draw the line, or what's what? But like, and I don't remember his name, but what I know was mentioned by an individual from an authority is that a cybercrime is still a crime. It's still a crime, and if it's a crime, at least in Sweden, you are, I would like to say obliged, and I think that's the correct word. But you're obliged to report that, so it's still a crime. Now, does everyone do that? Definitely not. Unfortunately. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, because if 1 out of 10 cases is known to the public, the statistics is very skewed.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same word. Thank you.
Yeah.
We had a question from chat from Mikael Almstedt, and I think I know the abbreviation. Maybe you do. So, do your customers usually have a BCP and also have tested a scenario regarding ransomware or any breach? And BCP is business continuity plan, right? So do your customers usually have a business continuity plan, and have they tested a scenario regarding ransomware or any breach?
I would say almost never have that been the proper case, or has that been really the case. Yes, there usually has been some type of plan, some type of emergency, and if you look at the industrial sector, there's usually, when all systems stops working, they have the backup plan, do everything by hand. So in some cases, there has been enough manual processes and manual methods to kind of keep the business rolling, but a proper incident plan and getting the organizations back on track and in a somewhat functional state just after they have been encrypted, very seldom. Very often you find yourself in a position where you will almost or not at all be able to do any work for up to 2 or sometimes even more weeks, which is quite devastating. In some cases, the worst cases, you might not even be able to properly log into your own computer for over a week, maybe even more, which is hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine waking up one day and it's Monday morning and you start your computer and you can maybe log on, but as you log on and as you open your email, all of a sudden everything just shuts down. And next time you try to click on your email, you just get a big warning message or a big error message, and your desktop image has changed. Now it's just a black screen, and all your files have moved position. And now when you double click them, it opens in a different program that you're not used to, in a text program, for example, and nothing works at all. You can't mail. Potentially, you might have some cloud solution for mailing, so you could do it from your phone. That's not always the case, but sometimes. So now you might be in a situation where the phone is the only thing you have, and mail might be the only thing you have, and nothing else.
Yeah.
So that's not uncommon that many organizations find themselves there for quite a while, even if they might have some type of plan, but it's very hard to really prepare for ransomware if you haven't seen it before, or if you don't know what's really happening when you are encrypted to that level.
So do you think that companies should test their scenario for ransomware attack, or is it just the uncertainty of it that it's just not worth it?
At the very least, I think that if you get hit by a ransomware, the usually the quickest way to get back on track is to have proper backups. That is the general play field that you're working with here, because when a system has been encrypted, you can almost compare it to you're driving on the highway at maximum speed with your car, and then you suddenly just pull the handbrake. And when everything breaks, and then you go back and you're gonna try to fix it. Say if you pay the money and you're gonna decrypt it. If you think that everything is gonna be very pretty and nice and dandy when you just decrypt things, so when you put the handbrake back in place, unfortunately not. Things are gonna take a massive hit. So generally, the best way to get back in a functional state is backups, which means that should at the very least be properly tested, because it's also the case that the most sensitive data of an organization, the one that no one dares to touch because it's so sensitive and so important, that is also the data that's not properly backed up because no one dares to do it. That's also usually the data that's not allowed, or that's not, that's most damaging if it's even a short loss of data. So testing their backups and having some type of an incident plan, incident response plan, is for sure helpful, because it's otherwise it's very hard to really prepare for ransomware. You really don't want to end up there. You really don't want to find yourself in that position. I tell you that from experience.
That's true. I had something to ask, but it just flew away. So let's pick a question from chat from Ricky B. And I feel this in my heart, Ricky. He says it's so frustrating for him to constantly block attacks but knowing that the attackers are still out there. And just this week we received several quite well-made CEO fraud emails. Same with ransomware. Like, how do you feel about this powerlessness? And that's my day-to-day work. So maybe more me than you, Rasmus, but yeah, that's what I do. Because as some might know, I work in the SOC as a level 3 analyst, and that's what I do. We just stop stuff all day long. That's the only thing we do, and it just keeps on coming in. But yeah, I don't know. It's worth it for me anyway. But then there's also always the thing that the attacker only needs to be successful, like lucky once, and we have to be successful every other time, basically. Which is you don't want to mess things up. It's always a worry.
Yeah, I think that is the most painful part of it, what you just mentioned there, that they need to be successful once, and the defending side need to always be successful.
Yeah,
that's very unfair. That's extremely unfair.
It's very asymmetrical.
And that's the unfortunate reality. So how do you deal with that? It's hard, right? Obviously, it's hard. That's why the news are filled with this type of cases or incident that takes place all over the world, and that is still a very, very small amount of the real amount of cases that are out there. If you look at the majority of them are keeping silent and not saying anything. Sometimes they're not even telling, which is a bit funny. You wouldn't imagine that to be possible, but in some cases, not even the own employees are informed about their environment being encrypted. Everyone is just told to not start their computers, and then you shut off the central connection so that they can't connect their computers to the environment, and there's a server outage or a system outage or something like that.
Yeah,
that's also actually something that have happened several times.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is kept under the radar, not being like publicly released.
For sure.
So, Pale Skinny Swede, he needs to leave. Awesome show, Sergio Panda and Rasmus. Bravo. Thanks, man. Thanks for the intro and outro music. We got another question from Mikael Almstedt. He says, and I have no idea about this, so maybe you do. Do you use any threat modeling? If so, what tool?
I wouldn't. I don't do a lot of threat modeling myself. I wouldn't say. Now, as I've kind of moved into the incident and the forensic part of things, so coming from an attacking perspective, then it's been, absolutely, I need to map up what is available to attack and what's available to target. But threat modeling generally, would be from the other perspective of things. Really, what do we have? What do I protect? How should I protect it, and so forth. So I haven't been doing that a lot. I wouldn't say, but it's something that you naturally come into contact with all the time anyway, because understanding the threats and how they work and how they affect the organization is part of incident response and part of forensics anyway. So no, it's not something I actively do a lot. And quite frankly, I would love to do it more, but quite frankly, there's too many incidents out there. It's constant. It's unfortunate, but it's constant flow of incidents all the time, and not just one at a time, but many at a time. So it's enough to keep you very, very busy constantly. It's not that it happens once a month, or once every year. It's more towards every week, and sometimes multiple, or a lot of times in the same week.
Yeah, and it's not decreasing either. It seems to be speeding up, is my view of it.
Definitely, yeah.
So one thing that sort of, because we've spoken about the phases, we're going back and forth between subjects, but to the phases of an attack. So one thing, like when you have the threat actors on the network, they're on there, like how do you decide when you kick them out, and like what do you need to do to make sure they can't get back in? Because you can't just kick them right out the first thing you do, right? Or like what happens then if you just kick them out?
Yeah,
Or maybe it does. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends. It depends a little bit, because kicking them out is not always as easy as it sounds. Because to begin with, how can you be certain that you have really kicked them out? That's the first question you have to answer yourself. And many might say, yeah, well, we shut down all our servers. Yeah, you might do that, but that is kind of the same thing as going to a crime scene where there's blood on the floor and you wipe away all the blood on the floor and then you call the police. It's quite counterproductive because you lose so much forensic data. And I understand the perspective of save our systems. Unfortunately, it might be too late, or actually in some cases turning off your systems might and then turning them on again might actually re-trigger something, because sometimes there are scheduled tasks or scheduled things that are just waiting for an activation of some sort, which is reliant on a boot sequence or our systems booting up. So how do you deal with that then? Well, generally, if you're in a situation where you have not been encrypted, for example, and you're under attack and you're suspecting someone is about to really do something bad for you, then kicking them out fast is generally something you want to do. You want to mitigate and you want to contain the situation. You want to get under control, or get things under control. And the most effective way to do that while still preserving forensic data is generally to disconnect systems from the network, or block all types of out and ingoing traffic from central firewalls. How do you handle then people's clients that are sitting at home? Well, that's now we're starting to get into the gray zone here. And how do you handle it if the threat actor has compromised, say, if you're using Azure and Office 365? How do you block that access if they've accessed that? So protecting central on-premise infrastructure is generally something you can do very fast, and generally something you want to do very fast if you have any reason to believe that someone is actively attacking you right now. The downside of it is that likely a lot of systems will stop working, or at least their intended use will not be feasible or functional anymore, because they are probably reliant on some type of integration or connection to something somewhere. So it's a balancing game, and to be honest, I've seen all variants of it. Some that do nothing, even if they know things are really bad, or they know things has been terribly compromised, and they just change an account's password and they don't really think about it anymore. So, and in some cases, it's a no-brainer, and it's just shut down all servers immediately. And then we come in and it's like, oh no, we lost so much of the forensic data. And in some cases, people do the right thing or do a quite smart thing, and for example, shut down network communication. So it's all kinds of things, really.
So what you're saying is that you don't want, like, if you shut down a computer, you lose all the volatile memory of it. So all the data that's in the memory is suddenly gone. And that's a lot of forensic stuff that you can actually work with and find traces and go forward. So if you shut down a server or a client, then that's gone. All you have is the stuff that is left on disk, basically, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're in that situation, just don't shut it off. Just disconnect it from the network, if it's physically or not. But yeah, make sure it's not on the network, right?
Yeah.
Would that be fair to sum it up?
It would be fair to sum it up, yeah. And
it's good advice.
It's a good advice, yes. And I thought a lot about that because it makes sense that the natural instinct is, oh no, someone's attacking my system, shut it down, because they can't do anything more to the system at that point in time. It makes a lot of sense. And if you find yourself in the position that you know for a fact that you don't have any backups at all for the system, you might sometimes find yourself in the position that shutting it down just to preserve that, but you need to then expect that you might not be able to ever turn the system back on again, but you might preserve the data. In very few cases, that could be relevant, but you should never have to put yourself in a situation where that is the only option you have. And if you find yourself in a ransomware-like situation, then shutting down the system is usually gonna be too late. You won't be fast enough to react to do that. So
yeah. So Mikael Takeo in chat, I'll add that link on the YouTube channel, on the YouTube video later, just so you know. So that will be on the YouTube details. Because Twitch is blocking URLs, thankfully. So thanks for that. All right. So like kicking out threat actors. Have you ever been in this situation where it's a back and forth fight? Like you kick them out, they get back in, you kick them back out. Like, how does that feel like? That's gonna be another adrenaline kick.
Definitely, and it's usually when you find yourself in that position, that it's usually because for some reason we can't or are simply not allowed to do the proper kick out or the proper actions we want to take. Unfortunately, because in the end of the things, it's the organization that decides, right? So when I'm there, I can come with recommendation. I think we really should do this, but I can't force the organization to shut down the network for all their systems. I can recommend it.
Yeah.
So yes, there's been several of those cases, and yeah, it is nerve-wracking, and you know that it's just a matter of potential seconds before they do something really, really bad. And what you find yourself doing then at that point in time is that you need to be very, very quick and very, very smart with your choices. You need to make the right things in the right order. And that is hard. That is hard for sure. And that's something you almost can't fully prepare for. It's a crisis situation. And in crisis situations, you like that, you usually front load and you're bringing a lot of people to get a lot of hands on things, and you take things fast and you react quickly.
Yeah.
But it's that's a nerve-wracking. You definitely don't want to be in the case where where you come in and you're actively fighting someone. You want to do something but you can't, and then bam, encryption hits. That hasn't happened yet. But and I really hope it doesn't have to ever happen.
Yeah.
But maybe one day.
'Cause that's another cool thing that I think about incident response. If it sounds like a 1 or 2 man show, it's not the case. It's like a SWAT team of resources with like various skill sets that together gets to the end goal. So you bring in like a bunch of people and everyone is an expert in their field. Or it might overlap, of course, but like collectively there's a big skill set in that group when it's in a hurry, basically. And then that's pretty cool to see, I think.
Yeah. I mean, an environment that might have been built over a period of 15 years, 20 years maybe, that is now completely under attack, and you come in there as an external party, and you're supposed to fully understand that environment, how everything works, how everything is connected, and if it's been encrypted, potentially rebuild that 15 years of work, 15 years of history, and employees going back and forth quitting, and integrations and hard-coded passwords, and it's one of the most complex projects you can ever take on. So yeah, that's why I seldom say the word I did this or I did that, because it's just not feasible to alone take on such a project, especially when it's at large scale. You need a team, and that team can sometimes be very big to be able to handle things at such a scale and such complexity.
Yeah, I think
that's for sure.
Cool. I like that. That's one of my favorite parts. Mikael Takeo from chat says, I'm not sure if you can answer this, but if you can, Rasmus, have any of your customers had a cyber security insurance? It seems that this is not common in Sweden anyway.
Yeah, that is something I can comment, because that's something some people actually brag about or publicly say that they have. Yes, it's actually quite common for organizations to have a cyber insurance. And if I would call it a mistake on the cyber insurance part, is that traditionally the way that they have operated, and I definitely am not an insurance expert, but I know a little bit about them. They go by statistics. When they insure a car, then it's like, okay, how old are you? What type of car is it? And okay, then what statistical chance that you will damage that car in one way, and how much are we gonna pay? And then they do some calculation and they figure out, yeah, you pay this much to get insurance from us, because then we are very likely to go plus on that. The problem was just that this is based on the data that's out there. But what happens when so much of that data is not ever published, which is the case with cyber attacks? That is like a black hole of information that is just not public. And then you look at, okay, well, every year there's X amount of these attacks. Oh, well, okay, then we can calculate the risk and so forth, and we use those numbers. But well, the reality is like it's 10 times more. And then you put yourself in a situation where the numbers you have done your calculations on are way off. So that's that is I know that's a problem, at least that's come from the cyber insurance side of things, that many of them have gotten way harder and demanding much more. Unfortunately, some of them actually pay the ransom amount, which I find a little bit sad, to be honest. But some of them do, and it is starting now to be quite common, to be honest. Quite a lot of people have cyber insurance, because it's even in Sweden, yeah. I don't know the statistics at all, to be honest, but is ramping up, and it's quite a few. And if they don't have insurance, is a lot of the time it's been the case that they're very close, or they're working on getting insurance, but they might need to fulfill some criteria before they are there.
Yeah, because like a ransomware attack, even if you don't pay the ransom, can be really expensive.
Oh yeah.
Extremely expensive.
Extremely, yeah. It's not only the.
I don't remember the amount for the customer that did the public report. I don't remember the amount, the cost, but it was a lot of money.
Yeah, it was. I think it was 150 million approximately.
Swedish.
And just Swedish kroners. Yeah. So yeah, 15 million euro approximately.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's public information that's out there. But that was also that was some years ago, or 1.5 years ago, or something like that. But that is just I can't remember exactly what that sum was based on. But naturally, yeah, you have the incurred loss of production, or loss of customer revenue, or whatever your operation, what you operate in. You don't get money in. You can't produce, so you might not get product out. So that is in itself a pure loss in income, while your cost for incident engagement is going up, and then you might have a legal fine on you that you might have to pay as well. And then your internal workers that are working around the clock will need to get some kind of compensation, and then your security partner, and then your risk partner, and then the list goes on. It very quickly gets very expensive, and you can't really afford not to work weekends and evenings and do 9 to 5 with normal business rates in terms of money. But you have to go harder, and that gets pricey. That hurts.
Yeah, that's costly.
Yeah.
And Just 80 in chat says EdTech, and yes, I think that's the one. So another thing, speaking of attacks and like the different stages, like if it's initial foothold and then like discovery enumeration and then deploying a ransomware, like do you see that it's always the same group that does all the stages, or can like one group sell like stuff to another group to then proceed with an attack?
It's definitely both cases. It's quite common these days actually that one group might specialize in getting the initial foothold, and then they sell that access. Definitely. I looked at it actually early today, someone who was selling access to what they claimed was a major bank in the US, a top 100 bank, and they declared this root access. I don't remember where that came from, but I read it somewhere. I stumbled across it today, so that is definitely common and makes a lot of sense that maybe you don't get a hold of a ransomware group, but you might specialize in hacking web applications or specialize in password spraying or something like that. And if you can earn $20,000 on that or more, or that might be enough for you to be quite satisfied to move on. So that is definitely the case, and you can also see it quite clearly actually in some of the forensic investigations that the tooling, the methodology, the hours of the day and so forth has a very dramatic shift. Kind of like now there's a strict shift or shift change or change in who is behind the keys. And you can always, not always, but you can sometimes see a difference between this is a one-man actor and it's a group of actors. It's hard to fully confirm naturally, but in some cases there's like a linear progress. And you can kind of follow the footsteps, very linear, and you can see that okay, now that it hit 2 a.m. and where we believe this person is from, now all activities stop. There's only some passive things that rolling in the background, and then there's a 7-hour break, and then activity starts again, and then this pattern repeats. And it's like, yeah, I'm following this person's work day. They go to sleep and then they go back to working again. Except for in this case, it might be just a criminal person, not a working schedule. It's just their personal schedule, essentially. And then you can have groups, and you see that they're spreading out. They're doing different things on different places. One is focusing on exfiltration of data. One is focusing on preparing for the ransomware launch. So there's definitely all kinds of variations out there, which makes it very hard to do forensics on when there's just a sudden switch in how they work and how they operate, and what you thought were their methods are just something completely different when you hit that switch, or when you hit that point in time where that switch took place.
Yeah, I can imagine. Right, I want to go into one of my favorite parts of the show, the overrated, underrated thing. I think I've explained it before, but it's basically I throw out certain words or topics to you, and you sort of tell me your opinion of it, if it's underrated or overrated, or if you have no opinion of it, that's also fine. So one of my standard ones is 0 days. Are those overrated or underrated?
That's
they're tricky questions sometimes. I know.
In one way, I would want to say it overrated, and I say that because seldom the threat actors need to use something like a 0 day, because if most people don't patch things in a good way anyway, so they don't need to rely on something like a 0 day. They can use other techniques. They could use old vulnerabilities, and they're doing perfectly fine. The other side of things is that we just had these Exchange 0 days, and that's something I've been working with a lot, and I know how painful that can be. So saying is underrated feels a bit it feels wrong in my heart to say that. Even if we look back, if we would go back 1.5 months or 2 months in time, I probably would have said overrated. so I'm somewhere in between. There can be some 0 days are really cool and really scary, but in practice they're so hard to exploit, or there's such a narrow field where they are useful to exploit, and there's alternative methods that are much more effective or faster, and then it's a little bit like, yeah, it's cool, but will it really be used? Maybe not. And then you have things like the exchange, like the Pulse Secure that we had the other day, or not that day, the other year, a couple of months ago, half a year or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that was quite devastating. So
yeah, I tend to like my take on that is that it's overrated. You should fix your 1,000 days first, and then worry about this like 0 days. It's not completely true. It's sort of a bit of a rant, but yeah, that's a bit sarcastic, but yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to put it in one category and say that it fits perfectly in that category, I think. Yeah.
Right, next one. So higher education, and I mean like a college or university. Is that overrated or underrated for you?
I think it's overrated. And that is because, and to quote, I don't know if I should say the name, but to quote a friend, and he basically put it like this. I got the question essentially, have you studied? And I said yes. I've studied at university. I don't have a master's degree. I have a bachelor's degree, and it's good to have on paper, but I don't feel like that has been a major contributor to my deep technical skills. Maybe that's because what I chose to study, but I don't feel like that was the one thing that really, really gave me the edge to be the best at what I am. It taught me a lot of other things, for sure. And the way that the answer I got to that was basically that, that's how I view it as well. What it tells me, though, is that you can write, you can read, you can speak, you can do a task, and you can definitely learn.
Yeah.
And that is something that you easily take for granted, naturally. But it's a very important part of kind of anything you do. So the emphasis on how important higher education is, I think, is overrated. But I think understanding the real value you can get out of it, if you do it the right way. If you, for example, the way personally, I never really cared much about grades. I got half bad grades in the mandatory classes that I didn't really find interesting, but I got good grades in the things that I liked because that was easy. So pushing for highest education possible with the highest grades possible, I don't feel like that has been a major factor, a major part of why anyone is really doing really good stuff. And I know that's maybe summarizing everyone on the one pot, because I think there's definitely exceptions to this. But if we are to try to summarize things, that's approximately how I would put it, I think.
I think that's a really valid point. I haven't thought about that in a while, but it's like in terms of personal gain, because there's the point of like delayed gratification, which comes into play when we're speaking about universities. And this is from an old memory, but there was some study like sometime on kids, right? They studied delayed gratification. So I don't remember how old they were, like 4 or 5 or something. So they gave them a cupcake, and they told them, like, if you don't eat this cupcake, you'll get another cupcake in 4 minutes. So if you leave this cupcake on the table, you'll get another cupcake, and then you have 2 cupcakes.
Yeah.
And then they could correlate that, because they could sort of grasp the delayed gratification. Okay, if I don't eat this now, I'll have 2 cupcakes. And then they could correlate that to success later in life, because you could, you understood delayed gratification. And I think that comes into play with university as well. You're like, if I do this for 3 years, then I'll be able to do something. So yeah.
Yeah, and I like if you look at a lot of like job ads and so forth, a lot of them say we either want you to have a bachelor's degree, like 3 years of higher education, or 5 years of working experience.
Yeah.
Which in my head is, I would put it the other way around. because if you put yourself in a place where you can really do something you're good at and something you want to do and something you like, I would argue that personally, at least, I've learned much more in 1 year working that I learned in 1 year of studying, but I learned quite different things, however. And I think it's also, you shouldn't underrate what you get from studying, and it kind of also is a little bit what you make out of it as well.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be. I don't feel like a master's degree and a bachelor's degree automatically means that someone who has a master's degree is going to be much better than someone with the bachelor's degree. I don't think there's a very clear. At least I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Yeah, good points. So we got a comment back on this zero days from Mikael Almstedt. He says, "Isn't zero days more for large state actors than that have a long-term goal?" And what's your take on that?
Potentially, you have the exchange 0 days, for example, that was attributed to Hafnium, right? And that was state actor related. So at some point in time, a 0 day becomes when it really gets denoted as a 0 days, it's related to when the public gets aware of it. So yes, exploiting something like that while no one yet is aware of it is more commonly attributed to nation state, yes. But when it becomes public knowledge and then it's a race between exploiting environments and patching them, that's, I think, where the lines get a bit blurry. If how much you can really attribute to nation states versus criminals who just take the chance and to jump on, jump at it. In many cases, you also have the case where a security researcher, publishes something, and it might not be handled that good. It might not be published in a good way, or the company that affected might not handle it in a good way. So it becomes sort of maybe not a full 0 day per se, per the the way you would define a real 0 day, but it's close to it. So a bit of a mix really, where I guess it depends on where you draw the line. When is it no longer a 0 day? But yeah, pure 0 day, I would probably have to agree to say that if you look back in time, it's mostly nation states that would be the first ones to utilize these things.
Yeah, I agree. Also because of the monetary value of a 0 day. So that exchange 0 day, I mean, if that would have been sold from like Zerodium or like the black market, that would be millions. Like that would be so expensive. So like, do I want to burn this 0 day for something? Because it's going to cost us a bunch of money. And maybe the organizations or groups that can afford that are nation states, rather than just some script kiddie at home who has like $5 million just laying around to buy a 0 day.
Yeah.
And some states might have, more cash than others to do this.
Definitely.
All right, so next topic there's only two more, so it's not too much. So attribution, overrated or underrated? This is for you personally, not like in general, or yeah.
I from one perspective, I think that I get the feeling that some are a bit quick on saying or claiming that this is a group or this is an individual. So on one end of things, that if you aren't really very clear, you should probably be very careful with really claim that someone is part of some group. And I think most serious actors out there are quite careful with this. So that's one side of things. The other side of things is I really want to catch them. I really want to understand who they are, catch them, and stop them. In which case, attribution becomes very important. I don't know how to place it. If it's underrated or overrated, I think it is underrated in its importance because the more we try to really attribute and really understand who the threat actors are, the closer we're gonna get to eventually catch them, or at least contribute to identifying who they are. So in that sense, I think the importance of the threat intelligence work that comes with attribution, I think that is potentially a little bit underrated how important that is. While on the other hand, I think some are a little bit quick to jump to conclusions, even if there might not be very clear evidence that who they claim is the actor is really the actor.
Right. Last question on the overrated underrated. Kali Linux.
Well,
yeah.
Are
you a script kiddie if you use Kali?
You don't have to be. You don't have to be. It's. I mean, why build something on your own when it's already there for you? It makes sense. Logically, it makes sense. Why build something that's super advanced, something stealthy, something cool when there's already so many tools there readily available for you? On that end, it makes sense.
Yeah.
On the other side of things, that those are also the tools, the methodologies, and the techniques that are known by everyone, which means that the defending side of things, antivirus companies and so forth, they know about these tools, they know about these techniques, and they will commonly try to identify them and stop them. So when I at least am engaged in security testing of various kinds, or when there's also a security operations center monitoring on the other side of things,
like
and
me.
like you, and I want to test them a little bit to see how good are they at detecting things. I'm not gonna use Kali. That no way. I could use, and I could do many of the things through there, and there's many techniques to be stealthy. Definitely, it has a lot of good stuff. It's you can use it in a script kiddie way or in a very highly advanced way, and you can use some parts of it only, or you can use a lot of tools from it. But I would be much more inclined to do a more manual and stealthy approach using technologies and methods that a normal IT admin might use. So to the extent possible, use only built-in things. And there's a lot of ways you can do that, and many people don't really know about how they work. You can execute code on a remote system in many different ways, and you can do it very sneaky, very stealthy, which is very hard to detect, versus these tools like the ones that come with Kali. They're usually built to do it in a predefined way. And as a forensics side of thing, you have seen those things. They stick out. They follow a pattern. Even if it's obfuscated and encoded and whatever, the pattern around it follows the same style every time. So you pretty much always know that, I don't know at all what that is because it's encrypted, or it's obfuscated, or it's encoded, and it's a combination of it. But I recognize the pattern, and it's like, that's Cobalt Strike, or that's Meterpreter, or similar. That's SMB-exec. So
you're getting a bit flamed in chat, Rasmus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when I asked that question, Mikael said, "Oh, shots fired." And then it says, "Wow, the politically correct answer. I think you wanted drama." And like, no, it's script kiddie shit. I only use X and Y. Sorry, Takeo. We're nice guys. So Rasmus, go ahead.
I mean, Kali, it's a full operating system, and saying that on its own is bad, or script kiddies only, that's the equivalent of saying that all those tools off that system are bad. That is definitely not the case. It's filled with good stuff if you use them correctly and if you know how to use them. But you can also use those tools and those methodologies in other ways. You don't have to use that particular OS. So
it's almost like these questions are hard to answer. Wow, it never really occurred to me that should be the case. So
It's good dialogue at least. It's not
yeah,
yes, no, or underrated, overrated only. Yeah.
exactly. So I have a quote from you that I like to use every now and then, which is I love that quote and I attribute it to you every time. It's basically when I talk about threat hunting and what to look for, and as you said, like you can do sneaky stuff that isn't really detected most of the time. And then I do some threat hunting example, and I say also if someone on a system runs who system info, netstat, ARP, like those built-in commands that won't trigger any AV, any EDR or nothing by like out of the box at least. And then you said once, if you don't know where you are or who you are, you're probably malicious. And I love that quote. It's 100% true. Like if you don't know who you are, or you're just a drunk sysadmin, which could be the case, but like in general, you're probably malicious. So I just want to say that I've stolen that quote for you, but I actually contribute to you every time.
Yeah. I'm happy. Feel free to do that. I didn't think of it as a quote, but I think it's a true statement.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. So unless you have anything else to add, I have a last question to sort of wrap things up, which is, do you have any? I mean, and sort of this is directed to companies or sysadmins or security people at any company. Like, what advice do you have for them? Like, how should they avoid a ransomware attack? How to not get ransomware 101 in like a few minutes or seconds? Go.
Yeah, go. Thanks. Okay,
Yeah,
the short, the short version. The obvious and the first things that comes to mind, and I don't say that just because this is you are here, but that is the detection capabilities. You can do so much to protect yourself, but you can never fully protect yourself, not in today's landscape. And what do you do if you can't fully protect yourself from everything? Well, then you need to learn to detect it. Look at if we take a look at the security field in general, there is a reason why there's security cameras and security guards is still one of the most commonly used methods today, because it's well known that purely protective measures, fences, electric fences, or whatever, that's not going to be enough. Someone needs to be there and look, and that's the same in cyber. Really, that's the biggest thing that gives the most impact. Now, if your environment is in a place where it's so easy to attack you that it doesn't matter if you have these cameras, this monitoring going on, because it will take 30 minutes and you are done, then you need to balance priorities naturally, of course, and then I think one of the key things there is really the identities topic. How identities are handled and how you ensure that your most privileged identities, your keys to the kingdom, how are these identities handled, and how do you make sure that they never end up in the hands of a bad guy? I think these are key elements in today's type of actors, and these are just a very small field of things you can do. You can do so much more than this, but these are two central topics, I think, that many fail on, which is why I stress them, because a lot of people do pen tests and security review and compliance checks, but very few people really handle their identities, and very few people, it's getting better, but very few still have proper and good monitoring.
Yeah, I agree with that. So something that hit me when you were talking, like speaking of EDR and SOC and stuff, because an EDR or a SOC would detect stuff that goes on. Do you think that attackers probe, like from the initial foothold, do you think they probe to see if they get spotted or not? Like really do.
In some cases we actually seen that either very stressed and very fast to do what they're doing, and in some cases the initial automation that usually takes place can happen, and then they wait a bit before they do anything manual, and it's hard to confirm, but that could potentially be because they did an initial probe, an initial check, and if they haven't been kicked out, the next day or 2 days afterwards, then there's a reasonable chance that the security monitoring is bad. And what we also have confirmed, though, is that there has been some cases where usually as part of sending out the ransomware, there's a pre-script or pre-activity that takes place where the threat actor, for example, disables antivirus. Because if you keep in mind, when you do ransomware on a large scale, you first climb all the way up and gain full control over the environment. And at that point in time, you disable antivirus everywhere. That's usually, I usually say at least, that if you have an antivirus that has ransomware protection on it, I mean, that's not really gonna help you in any way at all. Really, that will help you against a fully automated attack where no one cares and just tries to ransomware you immediately. But otherwise, it won't help you because the threat actors will first gain full access of the environment. They will remove your ransomware protection and then they will launch the ransomware. And what I've actually seen, that in that step of removing protection, for example, stopping services and disabling antivirus, there's also been some cases where they try to uninstall or try to stop EDR solutions. And that we have the concrete command line that has been used to try to do that. So.
Yeah, I've seen those as well pop up here and there.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else that did we forget to talk about, Rasmus, or are you happy with?
I think we could probably talk the entire day and still not run out of things to talk about. But I feel like we covered quite a good amount in good depth, and I hope it was interesting and a good session, good listening.
Yeah, for me it was really interesting. That's the best part about having your own show. I can just pick stuff that I find interesting and then we talk about it, and at least I have a good time. So perfect.
And I did as well. So I think you and I are winners in this topic at least. And,
exactly. It was a really good show and really active chat, which is nice. It makes for a very dynamic conversation because you don't know what's coming up, and it differs from a talk at a conference or something where you speak for 45 minutes and then you have questions afterwards. So here I just interrupt you every now and then with just questions and stuff. So it's easy to get off track, but I think we did well, Rasmus. Well done.
I agree. Likewise.
All right. So thanks so much, Rasmus. I'm going to have you on here again at some later point and talk about more stuff.
I'm glad to be here, and I am glad to have been here. So thanks for letting me on.
All right. Awesome, guys. And thanks to everyone in chat and everything. And this will be up on YouTube and as a podcast on, tomorrow, I hope. If I'm friends with Adobe Premiere Pro, we'll see. Right. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.